Psalm 119. Aleph. O the happiness of those perfect in the way, they are walking in the law of Jehovah. O the happiness of those keeping his testimonies, with the whole heart they seek him. Yea, they have not done iniquity, in his ways they have walked. Thou hast commanded us thy precepts to keep diligently. O that my ways were prepared to keep thy statutes, then I am not ashamed in my looking unto all thy commands. I confess thee with uprightness of heart, in my learning the judgments of thy righteousness. Thy statutes I keep, leave me not utterly. Beth. With what doth a young man purify his path? To observe according to thy word. With all my heart I have sought thee, let me not err from thy commands. In my heart I have hid thy saying, that I sin not before thee. Blessed art thou, O Jehovah, teach me thy statutes. With my lips I have recounted all the judgments of thy mouth. In the way of thy testimonies I have joyed, as over all wealth. In thy precepts I meditate, and I behold attentively thy paths. In thy statutes I delight myself, I do not forget thy word. Gimel. Confer benefits on thy servant. I live, and I keep thy word. Uncover mine eyes, and I behold wonders out of thy law. A sojourner I am on earth. Hide not from me thy commands. Broken hath my soul for desire unto thy judgments at all times. Thou hast rebuked the cursed proud, who are erring from thy commands. Remove from me reproach and contempt, for thy testimonies I have kept. Princes also sat. Against me they spoke. Thy servant doth meditate in thy statutes. Thy testimonies also are my delight, the men of my counsel. Daleth. Cleaved to the dust hath my soul. Quicken me according to thy word. My ways I have recounted, and thou answerest me. Teach me thy statutes. The way of thy precepts cause me to understand, and I meditate in thy wonders. My soul hath dropped from affliction. Establish me according to thy word. The way of falsehood turn aside from me, and with thy law favor me. The way of faithfulness I have chosen. Thy judgments I have compared. I have adhered to thy testimonies, O Jehovah. Put me not to shame. The way of thy commands I run, for thou dost enlarge my heart. He. Show me, O Jehovah, the way of thy statutes, and I keep it to the end. Cause me to understand, and I keep thy law and observe it with the whole heart. Cause me to tread in the path of thy commands, for in it I have delighted. Incline my heart unto thy testimonies, and not unto dishonest gain. Remove mine eyes from seeing vanity. In thy way quicken thou me. Establish to thy servant thy saying that is concerning thy fear. Remove my reproach that I have feared, for thy judgments are good. Lo, I have longed for thy precepts. In thy righteousness quicken thou me. Wow. And meet me doth thy kindness, O Jehovah, thy salvation according to thy saying. And I answer him who is reproaching me a word, for I have trusted in thy word. And thou takest not utterly away from my mouth the word of truth, because for thy judgment I have hoped. And I keep thy law continually, to the age and forever. And I walk habitually in a broad place, for thy precepts I have sought. And I speak of thy testimonies before kings, and I am not ashamed. And I delight myself in thy commands that I have loved. And I lift up my hands unto thy commands that I have loved, and I do meditate on thy statutes. Zayin. Remember the word to thy servant on which thou hast caused me to hope. This is my comfort in mine affliction, that thy saying hath quickened me. The proud have utterly scorned me. From thy law I have not turned aside. I remembered thy judgments of old, O Jehovah, and I comfort myself. Horror hath seized me because of the wicked forsaking thy law. Songs have been to me thy statutes in the house of my sojournings. I have remembered in the night thy name, O Jehovah, and I do keep thy law. This hath been to me, that thy precepts I have kept. Cheth. My portion is Jehovah. I have said, to keep thy words. I appeased thy face with a whole heart. Favor me according to thy saying. I have reckoned my ways, and turned back my feet unto thy testimonies. I have made haste, and delayed not to keep thy commands. Cords of the wicked have surrounded me. Thy law I have not forgotten. At midnight I rise to give thanks to thee for the judgments of thy righteousness. A companion I am to all who fear thee, and to those keeping thy precepts. Of thy kindness, O Jehovah, the earth is full. Thy statutes teach thou me. Teth. Good thou didst with thy servant, O Jehovah, according to thy word. The goodness of reason and knowledge teach me, for in thy commands I have believed. Before I am afflicted, I am erring, and now thy saying I have kept. Good thou art, and doing good. Teach me thy statutes. Forged against me falsehood have the proud. I with the whole heart keep thy precepts. Insensate as fat hath been their heart. In thy law I have delighted. Good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes. Better to me is the law of thy mouth than thousands of gold and silver. Yod. Thy hands made me and established me. Cause me to understand, and I learn thy commands. Those fearing thee see me and rejoice, because for thy word I have hoped. I have known, O Jehovah, that righteous are thy judgments, and in faithfulness thou hast afflicted me. Let, I pray thee, thy kindness be to comfort me, according to thy saying to thy servant. Meet me to thy mercies, and I live, for thy law is my delight. Ashamed are the proud, for with falsehood they dealt perversely with me. I meditate in thy precepts. Those fearing thee turn back to me, and those knowing thy testimonies. My heart is perfect in thy statutes, so that I am not ashamed. Kaf. Consumed for thy salvation hath been my soul, for thy word I have hoped. Consumed have been mine eyes for thy word, saying, When doth it comfort me? For I have been as a bottle in smoke, thy statutes I have not forgotten. How many are the days of thy servant? When dost thou execute against my pursuers judgment? The proud have digged for me pits that are not according to thy law. All thy commands are faithfulness. With falsehood they have pursued me. Help thou me. Almost consumed me on earth have they, and I have not forsaken thy precepts. According to thy kindness quicken thou me, and I keep the testimony of thy mouth. Lamed. To the age, O Jehovah, thy word is set up in the heavens. To all generations thy faithfulness, thou didst establish earth, and it standeth. According to thine ordinances they have stood this day, for the whole are thy servants. Unless thy law were my delights, then had I perished in mine affliction. To the age I forget not thy precepts, for by them thou hast quickened me. I am thine. Save thou me, for thy precepts I have sought. Thy wicked waited for me to destroy me. Thy testimonies I understand. Of all perfection I have seen an end. Broad is thy command exceedingly. Mem. Oh, how I have loved thy law! All the day it is my meditation. Then mine enemies thy command maketh me wiser, for it is before me to the age. Above all my teachers I have acted wisely, for thy testimonies are my meditation. Above elders I understand more, for thy precepts I have kept. From every evil path I restrained my feet, so that I keep thy word. From thy judgments I turned not aside, for thou hast directed me. How sweet to my palate hath been thy saying, above honey to my mouth. From thy precepts I have understanding, therefore I have hated every false path. Nun. A lamp to my foot is thy word, and a light to my path. I have sworn, and I confirm it, to keep the judgments of thy righteousness. I have been afflicted very much, O Jehovah. Quicken me according to thy word. Free will offerings of my mouth accept, I pray thee, O Jehovah, and thy judgments teach thou me. My soul is in my hand continually, and thy law I have not forgotten. The wicked have laid a snare for me, and from thy precepts I wandered not. I have inherited thy testimonies to the age, for the joy of my heart are they. I have inclined my heart to do thy statutes to the age, to the end. Samech. Doubting ones I have hated, and thy law I have loved. My hiding place and my shield art thou, for thy word I have hoped. Turn aside from me, ye evildoers, and I keep the commands of my God. Sustain me according to thy saying, and I live, and thou puttest me not to shame because of my hope. Support thou me, and I am saved, and I look on thy statutes continually. Thou hast trodden down all going astray from thy statutes, for falsehood is their deceit. Dross, thou hast caused to cease all the wicked of the earth. Therefore I have loved thy testimonies. Trembled from thy fear hath my flesh, and from thy judgments I have been afraid. Ayin. I have done judgment and righteousness. Leave me not to mine oppressors. Make sure thy servant for good. Let not the proud oppress me. Mine eyes have been consumed for thy salvation, and for the saying of thy righteousness. Do with thy servant according to thy kindness, and thy statutes teach thou me. Thy servant am I. Cause me to understand, and I know thy testimonies. Time for Jehovah to work. They have made void thy law. Therefore I have loved thy commands above gold, even fine gold. Therefore all my appointments I have declared wholly right. Every path of falsehood I have hated. Peh. Wonderful are thy testimonies, therefore hath my soul kept them. The opening of thy words enlighteneth, instructing the simple. My mouth I have opened, yea, I pant, for thy commands I have longed. Look unto me and favor me, as customary to those loving thy name. My steps establish by thy saying, and any iniquity doth not rule over me. Ransom me from the oppression of man, and I observe thy precepts. Thy face cause to shine on thy servant, and teach me thy statutes. Rivulets of waters have come down mine eyes, because they have not kept thy law. Tzadeh. Righteous art thou, O Jehovah, and upright are thy judgments. Thou hast appointed thy testimonies, righteous and exceeding faithful. Cut me off hath my zeal, for mine adversaries forgot thy words. Tried is thy saying exceedingly, and thy servant hath loved it. Small I am, and despised. Thy precepts I have not forgotten. Thy righteousness is righteousness to the age, and thy law is truth. Adversity and distress have found me. Thy commands are my delights. The righteousness of thy testimonies is to cause me to understand, and I live. Kof. I have called with the whole heart. Answer me, O Jehovah, thy statutes I keep. I have called thee, save thou me, and I do keep thy testimonies. I have gone forward in the dawn, and I cry, for thy word I have hoped. Mine eyes have gone before the watches, to meditate in thy saying. My voice hear according to thy kindness, Jehovah, according to thy judgment quicken me. Near have been my wicked pursuers, from thy law they have been far off. Near art thou, O Jehovah, and all thy commands are truth. Of old I have known thy testimonies, that to the age thou hast founded them. Resh. See my affliction, and deliver thou me, for thy law I have not forgotten. Plead my plea, and redeem me according to thy saying, quicken me. Far from the wicked is salvation, for thy statutes they have not sought. Thy mercies are many, O Jehovah, according to thy judgments quicken me. Many are my pursuers and adversaries, from thy testimonies I have not turned aside. I have seen treacherous ones, and grieve myself, because thy saying they have not kept. See, for thy precepts I have loved, Jehovah, according to thy kindness quicken me. The sum of thy word is truth, and to the ages every judgment of thy righteousness. Shin. Princes have pursued me without cause, and because of thy words was my heart afraid. I do rejoice concerning thy saying, as one finding abundant spoil. Falsehood I have hated, yea, I abominate it. Thy law I have loved. 7 times in a day I have praised thee because of the judgments of thy righteousness. Abundant peace have those loving thy law, and they have no stumbling block. I have waited for thy salvation, O Jehovah, and thy commands I have done. Kept hath my soul thy testimonies, and I do love them exceedingly. I have kept thy precepts and thy testimonies, for all my ways are before thee. Ta. My loud cry cometh near before thee, O Jehovah. According to thy word cause me to understand. My supplication cometh in before thee. According to thy saying deliver thou me. My lips do utter praise, for thou dost teach me thy statutes. My tongue doth sing of thy saying, for all thy commands are righteous. Thy hand is for a help to me, for thy commands I have chosen. I have longed for thy salvation, O Jehovah, and thy law is my delight. My soul liveth, and it doth praise thee, and thy judgments do help me. I wandered as a lost sheep. Seek thy servant, for thy precepts I have not forgotten.